Beoning tells the story of Jong-seo, an aspiring writer who bumps into Jaime, a struggling model who has taken up miming, and who is a childhood neighbor and former classmate of Jong-seo, whom he does not seem to remember at first. She reminisces their childhood, they sort of start hitting it off, and she asks him to look after her cat while she leaves on a trip to Africa. He dutifully feeds the cat while she is away, while having to return to take care of his family farm when his father is sent to prison. When she returns sometime later, she introduces Jong-seo to Ben, a mysterious rich guy she met in Africa. It's never entirely clear what he does for a living or whether his and her relationship is romantic or amicable or something in between. They keep hanging out together, Jong-seo envies their relationship, and one day Ben and Jaime pay Jong-seo a visit on his farm, a pivotal moment in the film when all the characters will start revealing who they really are, and it's when Ben reveals his secret interest to Jong-seo, that he likes to burn greenhouses. This film is an adaptation of the Haruki Murakami short story called Barn Burning, a writer whose work is considered to be near impossible to adapt. Yet we have this film to show us that it can be done, and it can be done well. This is one of the most fascinating and clever adaptations of a short story I personally have ever seen. It pretty much retains most of the story beats and the story structure of the novella. It also retains its mood and its mystery, and not only that, it also builds upon it, expands it, it really intensifies the suspense, and turns the story into something much more complex, much more ambiguous, and much more layered. Now, of course, certain things were changed from the short story to the movie. They were built upon, expanded upon, fleshed out, and made much more interesting. We still see everything through the eyes of just the main character, but I think the biggest difference is that there is no more age gap between Jong-seo and Jaime. In the novella, he was actually a married man, 12 years older than her, and he was just a simple writer who had no farm or anything like that. And their relationship in the novella is definitely just one of friendship. There's nothing romantic about it, while in the film it definitely does go a little bit further than that sometimes. And her relationship with Ben in the short story is definitely a romantic one, while in the film it isn't really made clear whether it is or isn't that. Here the dynamics are very different, because the director of the film really wanted to tell a story primarily about the struggles of young people today, about being young and feeling disadvantaged and hopeless and angry in the modern world. There's also a Donald Trump speech playing on the television to really make you feel and know that you are in 2018, and I think young people today are probably much more inspired and much more ambitious and passionate and driven than ever before, but it's exactly that drive that really works in their disadvantage as well. I mean, just take our two main characters. Jaime is a traveler who is also a struggling model and who also is studying miming, and Jong-seo is a writer who has to work part-time and also has to take care of his family farm. None of these two have any fucking idea how they will continue to make a living later on in the long run. I think this film is very much about frustrations and about anger, about repressed anger at that. During that very pivotal moment that I mentioned earlier when they are smoking weed, Jong-seo actually does mention that his father had a lot of anger issues and that he hates him very much. Those issues might have probably been passed down to him as well. He also mentions that his mother has been out of the picture for a long time and that his dad actually made him burn her clothes when she left them, and that he dreams about this very often. So yeah, this guy has a lot to be frustrated about and a lot to be angry about, even before the events of the film take place. In the film, the character of Jong-seo is turned into this very downtrodden and disadvantaged and powerless character, pretty similar to the character of Marcello in the film Dogman, another film I also reviewed. Both of these films have these protagonists who are very normal guys, who are just very well-intentioned and mild-mannered, who are just forced out of their comfort zone and forced to react to a situation in a way they were not designed to, in a way that's really not in their nature. Both of these films are pretty much about people being transformed by anger, an anger that's just built and built and built inside of them until it explodes, becoming even more harmful this way than it would otherwise. The female character is actually even more mysterious in the film than she is in the novella. I think every single little gesture she does that might seem mundane at first, I think are very important clues and offer great insight into her character. I mean, everything she does and everything she talks about in the film really seems to have a lot to do with the idea and the desire of disappearing. I mean, first and foremost, she is interested in and is studying miming, and she has this little ritual she does called tangerine peeling, which is exactly what it sounds like. She is miming the peeling and the eating of tangerines. So this is a person that's really interested in blurring the lines of reality. She's really interested in the things that are not there. Her stories, the things she talks about, are even called into question, both in the short story and in the film by the protagonist, that it's quite even possible that none of what she says is true. It might be possible that she is actually lying about everything. I mean, even about the fact that she knows Jong-seo. It really seemed odd to me during the entire movie that he doesn't really seem to remember her all that much. During a moment, she recalls a sunset she witnessed during her travels that really makes her very emotional. She starts crying and she confesses that she wished she could have disappeared during that moment. Later on, she recalls a childhood memory wherein Jong-seo actually rescued her after she fell into a well near her home. Obviously, Jong-seo doesn't remember this. I wonder why. So she seems to be talking a lot about leaving, about disappearing, and the motif of the sunset actually reappears in what's probably the most memorable scene of the film. It's that pivotal scene when they're smoking weed, and after that she starts dancing topless at the sunset. And this really makes me feel that she is the sort of very free-spirited person who is simultaneously living in this sort of fantasy world, but also is the one who is mostly living in the real world. She seems to be the one most open to and most moved by experiences. It's never actually made entirely clear why she behaves in this very ambiguous way. I mean, is she suicidal? Does she want to get revenge on Jong-seo, making him fall in love with her and then confusing the hell out of him? I mean, she does say to him that the only thing that Jong-seo ever said to her during the time when they were classmates was that she is really ugly. So that would be reasons enough for a woman to get revenge on a man, I think. Is she insane, or is she just really hungry? Because she does talk about the concept of little hunger and great hunger. Little hunger being someone who is just physically hungry, and great hunger being someone who is hungry for the meaning of life, and how little hunger can turn into great hunger and stuff like that. You know, I wonder if this is her character. I wonder if she is actually great hunger. I wonder if she is just hungry for the meaning of life, just hungry for new experiences, new places, and new people. When Ben comes into the picture, things start getting very interesting because the contrasts and the rivalry and the class barrier between the two men, the two male characters, is really expanded upon and really built on and really developed a lot more so in the film than in the short story. Jong-seo is this guy who's really has a hard time finding his words. He's very apathetic. Things really seem to happen to him. He doesn't really seem to make things happen. While Ben is this rich guy who really seems to be very kind and generous. He has everything he needs and he can do whatever he wants. But at the same time, something really seems to be off about this guy. You just can't really put your finger on it. He seems to have this sort of god complex in a way that I think a lot of successful people have, because what they have is actually everything and anything, and it still doesn't ever seem to be enough. I mean, he has to do something incredibly extreme in order to feel something, and what he needs to feel, I guess, is the sort of feeling of power that he can't really get in the real world. So he burns greenhouses. Now, whether the burning of greenhouses is more metaphorical or less in the film is really up to the viewer to decide, but he really seems to be this very privileged person who can't really like build anything, can't really construct anything, can't really like create anything for himself, so he has to do the complete opposite, to destroy. Ben's involvement in the story really turns him into the sort of outlet for Jong-seo's anger and frustrations. Jong-seo even calls Ben the sort of Gatsby, the sort of very rich and privileged guy we just don't know anything about. And of course Jaime responds to this that she doesn't know who Gatsby is, who or what the Great Gatsby is, because obviously she lives in the real world, she doesn't live in books. So this film, man, I think it's really very interesting. It's very ambiguous. It really doesn't explain a lot of things. It really leaves a lot of stuff up to the viewer's imagination. I think it's a great adaptation of the short story. It really retains those themes of loss, of destruction, of loneliness, and of confusion especially. And I loved it. It's definitely my kind of film, one that really keeps me thinking, keeps me pondering a lot, even weeks or months at a time after I've seen it. Since I'm not very familiar with this director, Chang-dong, my question to you guys would be, what is your favorite film from this director and how does it compare to Beoning? Because I really like this film and I'm really curious to see what other films he has made and what are your guys' opinions about them. So don't forget to leave those comments down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching my review, folks. As always, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so I can see you guys later in other reviews. I love you for it. I appreciate you watching me. Don't forget to stay cool and keep watching movies, guys. And until I'll see you next time, bye bye.